This is an extract from the Leader Coronavirus Daily podcast by the Evening Standard and hosted by me, David Marsland. To hear the whole thing, search for it on your podcast provider.
We cannot continue simply to be prisoners of this crisis. We're preparing now, slowly, cautiously, to come out of hibernation, and I believe it's absolutely vital for us to set out the way ahead.
As Leicester became the first UK city to go back into full lockdown amid a surge in coronavirus cases, Prime Minister Boris Johnson was elsewhere in the Midlands promising a so-called New Deal to soften the blow to the country's economy post-pandemic. Our editorial column says perhaps he should have been making a different speech.
Boris Johnson picked the wrong day, the wrong place and the wrong theme for his big speech today. This was meant to be the start of his big comeback. So how's that working out? He headed to Dudley to make what he hoped would be an eye-catching speech about opening up. But just 55 miles away in Leicester, the virus is spreading again and the government is locking the city down. What's the plan for the Leicester lockdown? Why, days after it was first rumoured, is it still being only done slowly, when we know the way to control the virus is to act fast? Why has the government not even yet set out its powers to do this, as it had promised to do by the end of the month? That's the important thing that Mr. Johnson should have been talking about in the Midlands today. At least he's got one thing right. All eyes are on the Midlands, just as he wanted. Only it's what's happening in Leicester, not his speech in Dudley, that's getting our attention.
But what's life like on the ground for local shops and businesses in Leicester who've been preparing for weeks to finally open their doors? Barrie Stephen, who owns Barrie Stephen Hair Salon, joins me now. Barrie, how did you feel after hearing lockdown would extend for another 2 weeks?
Well, very disappointed. It's frustrating, to say the least, with an announcement like that and no backup or follow through. So we were just left hanging. So you asked the question, how do I feel? I feel exhausted because we've only just accessed the map in terms of boundaries here in Leicester and Leicestershire. So unfortunately, 2 of my businesses in the city centre are not going to be open now for the foreseeable.
You've obviously been thinking that you might be able to reopen soon. What has gone into the preparations to reopen for Saturday?
Well, we haven't stopped. I haven't stopped since, since lockdown, really, in terms of making sure my team, first of all, were okay and the clients. And then putting the practical side and the measures and the guidance. Of course, it was only 2 weeks ago we were given that guidance. Yet again, we were left. But I think we followed similar countries when we looked at what Germany and Denmark, and of course, we're in touch with the industry, and so that we could see what was happening through L'Oreal and Weller and Swatch and various companies like that. So we came up with our own guidance. What could the client expect coming into the salon? There'd be a pre-digital consultation. The clients would be encouraged to make a reservation fee to secure that appointment. And from coming to the salon, they would be advised on what time to come. They couldn't come late. They have to turn up on time. They couldn't bring anybody with them. There was so much protocol put into place. We would greet them at the door. We would use hand sanitizer. We would elegantly put sanitizer in their hands, and we would do the same. So we split the teams into 2 shifts. We've got an A and a B team, so that if anybody did get poorly or there were any signs of COVID, that team could go off and isolate, and therefore it wouldn't shut the business down. We'd still be able to work at 50% capacity.
That's a lot of logistics to consider. What's it cost you to make these preparations?
I've spent thousands of pounds on preparation with, from disposable towels, disposable gowns, masks, visors, and actually a lot of it is just guidance. None of it is lawful, So I mean, actually, the only thing we have been told to wear is the visor. But of course, we're wearing gloves, and we've put all of that PPE in place, and of course the 2 metre distancing, and we've still worked on that model. I remodeled one of my salons in Anstey, and I've spent a ton of money on redesigning that, and I had a tenant upstairs, so we've sort of given notice to him, and we've turned upstairs into a salon as well, and put a backwash in there. So we've gone all out, basically, Bonnie, in terms of spending lots of money preparing the salons, and then of course to be told we can't open them, it's devastating.
You must have had bookings for weeks on weeks. What happens to those clients now?
I took a couple of my front house team off furlough 2 weeks ago, and they are working through the bookings. Now, of course, they've got thousands of appointments to reschedule, and the process will be push them back the 2 weeks and ongoing. Because we're fully booked for sort of 6 to 8 weeks anyway. But how long can people wait, And hair is such an emotional business, and when times like this, very stressful times, unprecedented times where, you don't know where you are, it really does make you feel, it's a great tonic having your hair done. I think it's a shame they've had to lock down Leicester, but I understand if there is a serious issue, which they're saying there is, then of course health before anything else. But I do feel in some ways they're picking on Leicester in a way, and using it as an example, and maybe also using it as a guinea pig, really, because I guess we're not going to be the first city in the UK to be shut down. I think this is probably the first of many, but sadly we have to start that,
Search for the Leader Coronavirus Daily on any podcast provider to hear more from the podcast.